Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our fireside chat, the new customer data imperative, tuning foundations into value. I'm Jason, moderator for today's session. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. Today's chat will last approximately 50 minutes. Everybody's microphones are muted by default, but please use the chat functionality for any questions that you might have during this presentation. We'll address them directly following the chat. We're also recording today's session and we'll share it with all registrants moving forward. So let's jump into the meat of it. Today, we'll explore how forward-thinking organizations are transforming their approach through strategic marketing and IT collaboration, building unified customer data foundations that power both technical excellence as well as business success. Before we get into our meaty topic, let's introduce this amazing set of panelists. First, we have Joe Stanhope, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester. Joe brings an extensive expertise in customer data platforms, marketing technology, and digital marketing strategy.
Hi,
Next, I'd like
Jason.
to
Great to be
introduce,
here.
oh, thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Jeanne Jones, or sorry, yep, Jeanne Jones, Vice President of Digital Marketing at Analytics at BECU. So BECU is a not-for-profit credit union dedicated to improving the financial well-being of our members. With more than 1.3 million members and $32 billion in assets, BECU is the largest not-for-profit credit union in Washington and one of the top 5 financial cooperatives in the country. Jeanne has been at the forefront of implementing data-driven strategies in the financial sector. And finally, we have Ranajay Nandy, Vice President of Analytics at Citizen Watch. Ranajay has been instrumental in transforming how Citizen Watch leverages customer data to drive business growth. So with those introductions, let's begin our discussion. And I'd actually like to begin by exploring just the fundamental challenge organizations face when trying to derive value from their customer data investments. So, Joe, from your perspective at Forrester, what are the most common roadblocks organizations face when trying to achieve ROI with their customer data investments?
That's an excellent starting point. And I think the good news here is that I think we've achieved widespread recognition by firms that data is critical to their success across the enterprise, but in particular related to customer engagement. And that's forced, I think, a rebalancing of the technology discussion that we have around marketing and customer engagement. We're at the point now where I don't think we can have a technology conversation without also discussing the data. And when we peel back a lot of the challenges and opportunities related to marketing, the through line on those is that it's oftentimes, almost all the time, related to the data. If you want to understand your customers, target interactions, personalize, get reach into touch points and devices, that's pretty fundamentally dependent on the data today. And what you've seen is really an explosion in the scale and complexity of that data because it's turned into this flywheel, right? Where we do more engagement, it becomes more specific and granular, then that generates yet more data, which we then have to use to generate more interactions. So it keeps going around and around in this growth cycle that we found ourselves in. And while the data is more important than ever, and I think we can all agree on that, arguably it's more difficult to deal with than ever before, right? So you get these exogenous factors, privacy and regulatory mandates, changing consumer behaviors and expectations, just the economic pressure in enterprises around efficiency for investments and staffing, a general loss of data access and signal. These make it difficult to collect and manage and apply the data. And while most companies do have a lot of data already, you have internal issues that create challenges as well. Users report to Forrester in the surveys we do around data that they report back commonly it takes too long to deliver value with data. There are foundational data management challenges. Users experience poor data quality, and data still tends to exist fragmented and in silos. And those all contribute to challenges in accessing and making data actionable.
Yep. Simply say, I mean, it seems like the more data, the more opportunity, but also the more problems that our customers are facing right now.
Exactly.
I mean, great overview, and I think that it make it more tangible. I'd like to tag Jeannie and Ranajay in. Can you just share your specific challenges that you're facing in your organizations when implementing customer data infrastructure? and how you overcame it. And just to be more directive, Jeannie, how about we start with you on the marketing side?
Sure. So years ago, I want to say probably 2018, 2019, BECU was primarily focused with accessing the data for the marketing team. Joe mentioned there was, silos of data everywhere. So it was really at that point an exercise of just accessing the data. And we overcame that by working with Imperity, by onboarding it into one system, stitching it together. And now, going back to something Joe said, he mentioned this flywheel and that there's just more and more data. And that's what we're finding is we're trying to scale now. So the data and the Member 360 that we've created is only accessible to marketing, but our digital teams want access to that Member 360. We want to be able to infuse that elsewhere in our organization. So we're now looking at leveraging a cloud infrastructure and expanding our use so that we can democratize that data across the entire organization. So what I would say is, the challenges can seem daunting, but you just need to face them one challenge at a time. It's really hard if you look at the whole picture, and it's a journey, it's not a project with a start and an end date. It's something you're always going to be working
Yep. I would say that in my 10 plus years being a marketer, I've absolutely noticed it's taking me longer and longer to get the audience builds that I need because of the plethora of data that's happening behind the scenes. And just the back and forth my technical teams is just elongated longer and longer and longer. And Ranajay, I mean, you sit on that backside, like, what are you experiencing at Citizens Watch?
So it's very similar. There are like a lot of data, particularly customer data. As an organization, I think Citizen Watch has identified is a very valuable data, but it is all scattered. It was all scattered, siloed, and in some cases, it's organized as well. But again, it's in a portion of the organization. So we kind of started a mission of creating a source of data for customers, and that's where we came in contact with Amperity to build our CDP. And as we are going through the process of building this so-called, centralized consumer data, we are seeing that our internal data has a lot of issues as well. It's not really super clean. There's a lot of garbage data as well. So we started with an internal process of cleansing that data as well as we are building the CDP along with Amperity. So it's a kind of a parallel process going on. That's number one. And the number two challenge we have is, okay, you have this customer data, but people still uses the insights from their own local, servers or things like that. So we need to kind of get to a process and governance that whenever we are trying to get customer intelligence, we go to the CDP data. This is the go-to data. So it's kind of a training and a process and a governance that needs to happen. And again, I completely agree with Jeannie. It's not a project. It's not one implementation. We've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years, and every time there is a new challenge, and we are trying to solve. But we have a very we kind of establishes very a philosophy or a standardized process of saying that this is the consumer data, and whenever a new consumer data comes in, this is the process going to flow and get into Amperity. So we're not 100% there, but we are trying.
Uh, uh, totally agree. I think it's I don't think there's ever any endpoint in this process. It's just an ever going job that needs to be done in any business. And the thing that I think that just really going to connect this theme together of like breaking down these silos between, Ranjay, what you're talking about, the process workflows, about getting in the right data and molding it in, Jeannie, you being able to actually go utilize it. Can you, Gene, maybe start with you from like a marketing lens? Talk to me about how you've successfully aligned like technical teams with your marketing objectives to ensure that your customer data investments actually deliver tangible business outcomes.
on. Yeah, sure. I always know that you need to get multiple perspectives in the room. You also need to get multiple subject matter experts in the room. So we use a use case approach where we first start with the business problem we're trying to solve. And we specify a use case, whether it's, we want to personalize content on the website, or we need to answer a business question with our analytics, or we want to create a certain segmentation for a mailing list, whatever that is, we start with that. And then once you identify your use case, you start to identify what data do you need to bring your use case alive. And there are much smarter people than me that can then solve that technical problem. Where does the data live? How do we bring it together? Are we defining it the right way? Are we moving it at the right cadence or frequency that we need to? Are we integrated with the right systems? Uh, the other thing that we try and do with each use case is attach a business outcome that we're trying to drive with that. So whether it's being able to answer a question with insights and then apply that to optimize a marketing program, or if we're doing a personalized experience, tying that to a business outcome such as revenue or time savings or what have you. And I'm ultimately accountable for delivering the strategy and the outcome, but I can't do that without my partners. And so the use case really brings everyone together, and helps create that alignment between the technical and marketing teams. The last thing I would also say is RACIs are really important too when you're doing a use case, making sure everyone understands their role, what they're responsible and accountable for, because a lot of the times you are working across teams that maybe have never worked together before. So clarifying everyone's role and what they're contributing to the use case is also really important.
Yep. And I really love the use case approach because it's all about just scoping the exercise, because customer data projects could become
Yeah,
unwieldy really fast if you try to tackle everything all
right,
at once.
right. Again, it's all about that, making it bite sized, making it
Mm,
achievable.
absolutely. And Ranajay, from like your point of view, like how do you approach it at Citizens Watch?
So I completely agree. The use case approach is the way we go as well. We do not develop anything until we have a use case. That's how we kind of, as Ginny mentioned, we measure the success or failure of an initiative. There are two couple of things that we kind of do along with this. So one of the things that we organizationally did is we kept our analytics team within marketing, and that really helped in the sense of creating a liaison between a pure marketing function and a technical IT function as well. I think that really helps us to drive a use case with a very combined team of different SMEs and different domain knowledge, people from different domain knowledge. That's number one. And number two, what we also did is we every initiative we do, we always do with a combined. We run a sprint, so we do a combined sprint. We have combined agile program. So business people who are involved in the initiative come and go. Technical people who are there in the initiative come and go as well. And then the analytics team kind of hold that ownership of doing that. So these two processes actually helped us really to get to a complete path from a use case. We call it as an object to outcome model. So we always see that and then measure from there. We have failures as well. It's not that it's always successful, but I think most of the cases this model really works with our organization.
Yeah, the one thing that I really love about that is just the combined working groups. So, like a lot of the brands that we work with, sometimes they've struggled because there's not that translation layer between the business objective and the technical acumen of what it takes to achieve that objective. So that translation, that constant touch points are necessary to make sure implementations are successful. Now, the one thing that you both called out was the idea of outcomes. Because in the end, these customer data investments have to demonstrate some type of business value. So for the listeners that are on the call currently, can you let us know, like, what are the top ways that you or metrics that you measure success when it comes to customer data investments? And Jeannie, maybe we'll start over with you.
Sure. Um, Really, like, because we're a not-for-profit cooperative, everything we do is for our members. But just because we're not-for-profit doesn't mean that business outcomes don't matter, because all of our, it's a cooperative. So we still care about profit or revenue. We still care about member satisfaction and retention. So some of the metrics that we look at are, if we're automating something, are we gaining efficiency? Are there time savings or automation? Um, there's also revenue, right? So if we have a use case um, that's driving a conversion, we try and tie that to a revenue gain and measure it. We often will use test and control groups so that we can prove lift across the holdout. We also look at NPS. So if we enable a new experience that is tied to satisfaction, whether it's overall NPS or even we have something called transactional NPS, we'll tie it to that. Even with our insights, uh, we will tie it back to data value. So I'll provide an example of how we did
Mhm.
that. We got access to a whole new side of data that helped us to optimize our paid media program. It allowed us to calculate CPA at the product level and helped us. What we did with that data is we then optimized our paid media spend, and we lowered our CPA and we increased our ROI. But when we were telling that story, we didn't just talk about the lower CPA and the higher ROI. We said we couldn't have done this if we didn't invest in this data work. And so we really highlighted the partnership that we had with our analytics team in bringing that data together and tying that back. Another example is at the beginning of COVID, if you can remember 5 years ago, when everyone was sent home, people were laid off of their jobs, they their income was going down, but then they were getting these, government checks too. So all of our forecasts for deposits and savings went out the window. And so what we did is we actually set up forms to allow members to let us know what their situation was, and we gathered that data so we could customize how we could help them, and it allowed us to stabilize our forecast. So we knew, these folks were going to have trouble making their bills. These folks were, all of a sudden had all these savings in their account and weren't saving money. So it really allowed us to understand that situation. So we tied that back to NPS. We also tied that back to our ability to do a financial forecast. So we just continually talk about that too. So it's important that you make sure you connect the dots for especially your executives that are making the investments.
Uh, Absolutely. Even as a marketer, one of my big fears is not being able to tie all those disparate data points together to show marketing's true impact. Because sometimes if you don't have that unified data foundation, you're showing just a sliver of the business, which is obfuscates away the work that you and your team is actually doing. Um, you know, Ranjay, from your perspective on the other side of the coin, what metrics most resonate with your executive team at Citizens Watch?
So the way we kind of implemented CDP or the customer data platform and go from there, we wanted to identify them in two parts. One is more for activation within our marketing activities. That's one of the things that flows in from CDP. And another is the pure consumer insight, which actually being used by the other functions as well, other than marketing, like product development, merchandising, sales, and everybody else as well. So we wanted to actually show matrices on both of them as well. So we started more on the marketing metrics. So we created metrics across the funnel of marketing, from the awareness to consideration to conversion. So we have the typically the conversion rate, the click-through rate, and those kind of things being reported, but also the brand health, because we have some business goals that we wanted to get our marketing narrative to a certain um, segment of consumers. Are they resonating? Are this brand health is gaining with them or not? So there are measures for that as well. So
Mhm.
that is purely from marketing point of view. The rest of the organization mainly utilizes this by a plethora of dashboards. Everybody has their own. They look at the regions, they look at the demography, they look at what they're purchasing, what is the right fit for what kind of customers, loyal customer versus newer customers, where are they in their journey, and things like that as well. And that is basically we are measuring purely from the usage of those dashboards. We know the usage metrics for that dashboard, and also we get some of the information that they're using those customer insights in their day-to-day decision making, and actually making progress in their function of sales or their function of product development as well. So it's kind of a mix of pure calculated metrics, and also some of them are a little bit subjective as well.
Mhm. Um, Totally makes sense, especially when you're trying to like measure both your tactics as well as the big strategy. I like to think of it as leading and lagging indicators because you have to understand what's working ahead of time so that your lagging indicators that are probably more business value, business outcome based, you give that your time to correct toward those. Um, you know, one last question about this around silo data. You know, this is this is one of the central challenges that we're like or addressing today. And you know, there was a theme that came up around governance before. So, Jeannie, like, what governance structures have you implemented at BECU to like break down these barriers and make it accessible without posing any type of security risk?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because we operate in financial service sector, there's
Hmm.
a lot of regulation and governance. It's very important for our business, not just for our members' sake, but just because there is regulation out there. So we actually have a data governance committee. We actually just met yesterday, and it's actually a voting body. So there are issues we bring in front of that governance committee that votes on, substantial decisions that could impact our organization. But part of the the data governance team, they actually have been doing a lot of work to create data glossaries, understanding where data is stored, understanding where it's exposed, and who can view it. So documenting all of that, and then they conduct reviews on a regular basis. So I have to complete, a risk assessment of the data that my team has access to every year that basically verifies, yes, we still need this. Yes, this is how we're still using it. Are there any other new use cases? So it's kind of built into all of our workflows and the way we work, which I'm super appreciative for. I've worked at other organizations where it hasn't been this regimented, but I actually really appreciate the structure.
Yep, makes sense. And you know, Ranjay, turning toward you, you mentioned one of the indicators being like marketing activations. You know, how do you balance the approach between accessibility and security?
It's very hard to do. As an organization, we have utmost importance for us to maintain customer privacy. So, and the consent. So it's very important to know that what's the lineage of the data, where it is coming from, how it is being collected. So we have very similarly, we have kind of a steering committee for data governance. So we try to measure where it is coming from, where it actually need to reside. Is it ultimately, if it needs to go into something like Amperity, is that is the only place it should reside, or this should be used other by other users as well. So a
Mhm.
total data lineage, the storage and usage, we kind of have some standard processes that we want to follow, particularly with our customer data. We are very we're making trying to making secure as much as possible. So the steering committee gives the direction, and there are some tools and there are some manual checks and balances as well to make sure that this whole process is being followed diligently in general. So any part of the organization, particularly if it generates first party customer data, it needs to go through that process to make sure that it ultimately either should resides into Amperity, because this is our central data platform
Mhm.
for first party data, and then ultimately who is going to utilize it and how they're going to utilize it. For I can give an example, like we build our own dashboards as well using Amperity data, but none of the PII. So it's like that's the governance we are trying to make. You can know what customer, what they're purchasing and everything, but you do not get a PII of that customers. We are kind of restricting that. So and again, it's a continuous iterative process to improve better further.
Thank you. And I think so far the conversation has been very much focused in on like how do we establish the foundation. We talked a little bit about technology, but more importantly about the alignment and the processes underlying it to make sure that we can build upon it. So like let's shift our focus now to how organizations are applying customer data to create value, particularly through the hottest topic on the market right now, AI and personalization. So Joe, as AI becomes more integral to personalization strategies, could you share an example of how organizations are using AI to facilitate authentic customer connections?
Absolutely, and personalization is absolutely imperative. Marketers know this. We talk about it literally every single day over here with marketers. Something I actively listen for, and personalization as a concept certainly represents a wide range of activities, depending on the company and their strategy, where they operate, the business model, and so on. But the underlying concept, right, that's so critical here is like timely, relevant, continuous engagement. It's very top of mind and it's driving a lot of investment right now. And AI certainly has a big place to play in that. In fact, it has for a long time. I mean, you could say pretty reliably that predictive AI technologies are essentially the backbone of most personalization optimization systems already. But as we've moved on over the last couple of years into some of the generative AI and now agentic AI, those are showing benefits now as well. A lot of the heat now is discussing the use of generative AI techniques to handle creative and content, using those AI capabilities to ideate, generate, iterate text, images, video, and so on, translation with language, reformatting content. And that creates a real boost to personalization. One of the classic longstanding challenges in personalization and optimization has been generating enough content to power the experiences that are being supplied. So this really creates an accelerant, right, for generating enough creative to power these personalization strategies and to do it efficiently, which is a big, big boost. We're also seeing beyond that now the emergence of AI-enabled interfaces, so natural language queries to really democratize data and insights to marketers, application assistance to make using and developing personalization interactions easier and faster. This is collapsing the workflows and the time it takes to bring personalization to market, which is extremely interesting and has tremendous value. We're also starting to see AI just generally get used in generative AI techniques to support marketing operations, which underlies, of course, the development and delivery of any personalization strategy. So budget management, resource allocation, the research that goes into it, customer insights, even creating briefs for creative teams. And more aspirationally, looking forward to it, and we're just starting to see the earlier views on this, is to take generative and agentic AI to really start generating and optimizing true customer journeys and to plug the optimization and personalization capabilities into those broader journeys that, again, historically has just been very manual and difficult to do with the resources and the time and the tools we've had. But these new AI techniques are really making it possible and practical, right, to really undertake true journey orchestration. And personalization will factor into that as well.
Totally agree. And one of the big things that stood out about me, what you said, is the really personalizing content and content creation.
Mhm.
Really bane of a lot of marketing organizations out there, ours included. You know, Jeannie, not to lead the witness,
Expensive, right? It's very expensive.
so
Hmm.
expensive. Um, but I don't want to lead the witness too much, Jeannie. But what have you found to be successful? You know, managing this customer fatigue while still delivering personalized experiences.
Yeah, our customer base isn't huge. So we have to be very careful about fatigue. And also, a member's not going to be in the market for a mortgage every month, right? So we really have to listen to signals. So when we create our segments, we really try and narrow the audience that's receiving a message to ensure it's relevant. And we'll use those signals. Also, Joe had mentioned predictive modeling. We use that a lot based on those signals to present dynamic content within the journey, whether it's email, website, or in our paid channels. And then uh, I would say like that multi-channel journey is something that we're really trying to focus on now. I think, email's easy, but then how do you make that full journey and all those touch points work together?
Yep.
I will say we haven't really done a ton in using generative AI from the marketing perspective because we're still um, assessing risk and looking at that, but we are using it internally with our own team members and looking at how we bring that alive in contact center interactions. So I think we're a little more conservative than your average organization too.
That makes sense, especially being in like a highly regulated industry. Um, so maybe more inspiration. Ranajay, like how does Citizens Watch approach this balance between personalization and customer fatigue and more the retail or high-end retail industry?
I'm not an expert in this topic for sure. I mean, my marketing counterpart would have given a better answer for this. Um, we are see the what I see is generally where I get involved a lot more. Definitely the segmentation journey and content that kind of gives these three pillars gives the personalization journey, right? And
Hmm.
part of the predictive journey, predictive analytics that has been there before, we have been utilizing what needs to be utilized in terms of the journey and our segmenting and connecting to the customers with the right content. For us, the content is very important. So we have a very high standard on the content. So we have not used something created by generative AI yet because we did not find the right solution or the right platform yet. Um, but what I think we are exploring still, particularly the generative AI part of it, how that can accelerate. What are the options there?
Hmm.
Um, Again, I think we're in the very early part of the journey, and I really do not have a lot of information about what we are doing right now about this. But we are exploring because that's the area which we'll always explore and grow. Because for us, because of it's a high-end retail product, so people needs to be always the content need to be always fresh to the customers. They need to look at in a different way. They need to know about the watches in a different way. They need to know what is coming. They need to know the technology of the watches. They need to know about the style of the watches. So there are different perspective of the same piece of watch and
Hmm.
how you narrate the story to the customers as well.
Makes sense. And maybe this is actually a perfect jumping off point to be even more forward looking. And since we're just privileged to have Joe here to talk from Forrester, talk a little bit about what he's seeing in the market. A few questions for you, Joe. Like, first, we're actually seeing like significant consolidation in the customer data technology landscape. What are the best practices do you provide your clients when it comes to adopting like future looking tools, like a comprehensive platform solutions versus best of breed tools?
Yeah, I think companies are putting a lot of effort into this, and as powerful and as productive as, marketing technologies at large have been, you could probably say it's been successful in pretty much every metric you could throw at it. In some ways, marketing technology has become a little bit of a victim of its own success, where it's become expensive. There are a lot of different tools floating around. It gets complex, difficult to integrate. And a lot of companies are saying, this is critical technology to us, but also we've developed organically over the years a marketing technology stack that is essentially unsustainable, right? For cost, efficiency, productivity reasons. And again, I want to be very clear. This was organic, right? Marketing is very dynamic. We add channels, capabilities, data, all the time in marketing, much more than most other departments in the company. But that technical debt adds up, right, if you're not careful. And so there's a lot of low-hanging fruit just in general around increasing tool utilization, reducing overlap and redundancy, even reducing vendors. Companies are definitely looking at those more basic levers, right, that they can pull to add more pragmatism to their tech stack and start cleaning it up. Also having really just a unified standard approach to marketing technology. So different divisions or groups, regions aren't off making up their own different siloed stack of technology. So having consistency in what gets built and by whom. But mostly with the way we talk about this reformulation and rethinking a productive marketing technology stack, I actually tell people to avoid thinking in platform versus best of breed terms. In a way, you could say that's not actually the right question because no vendor or tool does everything, even if we wanted it to. And even if you could find a tool that did everything, you're still going to have legacy investments and customization and certain capabilities that may work perfectly well. The market is not actually looking for one supplier to do literally everything at this point. So the real question is there's a spectrum, right, of span between best of breed and a platform approach. And it becomes really how best of breed do you want to be? And what can you support in your organization? I think the way you look at this is to determine which of your technology capabilities are strategic versus tactical. Because I think we make the mistake a lot of times in saying we need to buy all these tools and applications and data capabilities, and we treat them as being all equally valuable, which frankly is not true. We might need all of those capabilities, but not all of them have the same level of impact on usability, customer experience, or their direct impact on, say, our marketing KPIs or revenue or even efficiency. So what you've got to do is take a hard look at your capabilities and basically split them up. Which ones do we need that are very tactical? Which ones are strategic differentiators for us that we need to own, continue investing in, and really build up? And so once you figure that out, your marketing technology roadmap actually becomes much more straightforward about what you're going to focus your resources on building. So, and to me, typically, when you look at what's most strategic, that's going to be what's unique to your organization. What helps you engage with your customers better than your competitors? What helps you develop a better understanding or view of your customers than anyone else in your industry? That's going to be your data assets, which we've been talking about a lot today, and your ability to orchestrate experiences. Those are the two things that really ultimately determine your ability to engage with a customer. Everything else is tactical and basically can be plug and play.
Mhm. So, in order to help all of the brands prepare for this future of customer data management, like what would you say are like the 2 to 3 steps that people should take to prepare for the transforming landscape and specifically AI here in the future?
Yeah, and with respect to the customer data management, I think there's a couple different angles to where AI is going to have an impact. The first is the customer data management capabilities. Those data assets are going to be a critical part of the data supply chain to feed artificial intelligence models, right? So there's a source aspect to these investments, where as companies increasingly build up their AI capabilities and want to have their models and algorithms really built around their business, their data, their customers, the CDP, customer data management systems, the warehouses are going to become critical data supplies to that AI practice. But then there's also, I think, the need to bring more of this AI functionality, the Gen AI functionality, agentic AI functionality, to facilitate and improve data management practices for better quality and efficiency. This is something I think we're going to see a lot more of, where we can really tighten up time to market, create efficiency, reduced FTE usage, and improve quality by having AI techniques help us actually ingest and manage and transform and distribute data. So it's much less manual and much less people centered. And I think that will be a welcome innovation in the data and marketing worlds. But AI is really similar to any technical capability. The success is determined by the people, right? This is still a people business in my mind.
Mhm.
So we've got to understand that we're going to ramp up our use of AI over time. We don't have to boil the ocean, which I hope we find comforting, right? Even if there's a lot of excitement about it, partially because AI is evolving very quickly. As we all know, it's changing every week, every month in incredible ways. But it takes time to operationalize and deploy and gain trust in these tools, right? Jeanne and Ranajay talked about how their organizations are still really figuring out exactly how would you use and how much trust do you have in these tools to deliver usable outputs that deliver reliable results, right? And that's a process that you have to build up into. So companies that prepare well do four things, according to our research here at Forrester. One, they're involving the right stakeholders to work on AI innovation. And that's, of course, marketing, but the IT and engineering teams, their data science groups, and of course, anyone responsible for data stewardship, right? The governance, privacy, security, and so on. Second, they plan for evolving their workflows. AI changes how people collaborate and the processes that you currently have in place. It's going to collapse those. It's going to be faster. There's a big change management play with process when you start using AI so you can productively use it. You're going to have a roadmap, third, for adoption. You know, you're typically going to oftentimes start in marketing with AI functionality that is manifesting within a tool that you already use, perhaps. You know, you've got an email tool, a content or a copy creation, Gen AI application pops up inside of that tool. You're going to try it out, see how it works, develop trust in that. And then eventually you probably move on and build more in-house capabilities that are proprietary to your company. And finally, companies need to be very smart about how they monitor and measure their AI usage. You have to make sure the outputs make sense, they're explainable, they're productive, they help customers. But also, we have to measure and track. We talked about these KPIs a little bit earlier, the efficiency of using AI, and ultimately, and that's where a lot of the usage is now, just trying to get, we're trying to do more product, right, with less time and people, using AI boosts and productivity, but also how does it drive the marketing KPIs and the revenue? Is that it? And that depends on a company specific KPIs. But ultimately, using AI should make us smarter and faster, and that should yield stronger marketing efforts.
Mhm. You know, uh, totally agree. Is still people centric business, and the portrait that you painted is going to require a lot of change on organizations. So, like Jeannie, as you're hearing this, what skills and capabilities do you believe your organization needs to develop, uh, and in your teams to succeed in this evolving customer data landscape?
Yeah, the good news is it's not rocket science. It's data literacy, which really is driven by curiosity. So folks should ask questions. What does this data mean? Where is it coming from? How am I acquiring it? How do we maintain it so it's fresh? The second is just like that, going back to the use case development. So the ability to translate real world problems you're trying to solve and how data will help you make that come alive. And then the third is just, focus on ROI. Don't just do something because it's cool. Do it because it will drive a business outcome and support your organization's goals. It may sound basic, but we all get caught up in doing. It's important to spend time on the planning and making sure that you're doing the right things and let the ROI guide you.
Love that. Let the ROI guide you. Totally agree, and I'm sure my boss would agree as well. Ron and Jake, like same question, but from your perspective, what are the skills and capabilities needed for future success more on the technical side?
So I think as Joe mentioned was mentioning, the engineering and IT part will be very important, because ultimately, you need to feed clean, usable data to a AI engine as well, or a Gen AI engine as well. Doesn't matter, right? So that part of the skill set should be remain strong in the organization, and that should be able to deliver it faster. So that skill set is very much needed. The other part, which again I completely agree with Joe, is the change management people. I think they will be the key to driving any organization from to Gen AI. I'm not saying Gen AI assisted organization, um, because of the fact that it will really collapse those processes. The current workflows we have is going to change. So we need to kind of connect the data or the insights or whatever is getting out from that Gen AI engine into these workflows, so it will collapse and rebuild itself. So they will be very important as well. And then the ultimate users, the users also need to be kind of trained, looked at the data, gain trust on that outputs as well. Because what Gen AI will, I believe, will is doing today as well, is generating those insights which we may get before as well, but doing at a very high scale and very high velocity as well. So how do you take it? How do you use it in our daily business business problems is very important. Because ultimately, for think of from a business point of view, it still will have a goal or a issue, and we need to solve that issue or actually reach to that goal. That remains the same. We are
Mhm.
using maybe a different technology or different tools or different vendors to solve this ultimately, but this will actually factor in the skill set because things will change. So the adoption is the key, the change management is the key, rather than just the tool, just the technology part.
Yeah, totally. Totally agree. And as we're approaching the end of this webinar, I do want to say thank you, Joe, Jeannie, Ranajay, for sharing all these amazing, valuable insights today. I mean, the strategy we discussed do provide a clear roadmap for organizations looking to bridge that gap between marketing and IT to unlock that full value of their customer data. But before we move to the audience questions, just want to wrap it up real quick with a few takeaways from our discussion. I mean, the first thing that we heard is that the marketing IT collaboration is no longer optional, but absolutely essential for organizations to compete effectively in today's digital first marketplace. Your teams need to be embedded with each other step by step in launching any customer data initiative to be successful. The second big takeaway that I heard today was really around the idea of scope and focus around a use case. Because customer data initiatives can take you in any which way direction. If you try to bite off more than you can chew, you'll end up just spinning and spinning and spinning and not getting to any business value that you report up to the higher ups, the executive teams, and ultimately your shareholders. And then finally, as AI truly continues to transform the customer data landscape, organizations need to develop both the technical capabilities and strategic vision in both marketing and IT to effectively leverage the use of these technologies. Um, so now we're going to take just about 5 minutes to look at some of the questions. Uh, First question that I see directed at Joe, really around ROI measurement. Many brands struggle to attribute specific business outcomes to their customer data investments. Can you share any frameworks or approaches that you recommend to your clients that are considering CDP initiatives?
Yeah, this is a common discussion point. The value proposition of CDPs is actually pretty intuitive, especially to marketers, and it's highly appealing. I think it partially accounts for the rise of the category overall. I mean, if you talk to a marketer, who doesn't want more, better, faster data? Like that's the easiest choice they've made all week. Um, of course, the devil is in the details. And it's important now, not only do they buy into the CDP, but starts with actually how do you, for a marketer, convince the rest of your stakeholders in the organization that you need a CDP too, right? When you go to, IT, security, the analytics or data science team, and tell them we want to deploy this capability, they're selling it internally now. And we talk about that, and then you get to the value creation. And value creation for CDPs can be difficult to articulate. If you're not clever, it can fall into a little bit of a middleware trap, right? Which is kind of a classic attribution challenge. And you see this in a lot of technology stacks and marketing technology historically, but the CDP is very powerful, does a lot of work, has a lot of value, but ultimately it's actually not the marketing engagement system, right? It's a little bit abstracted off of the endpoints. And so it's hard to say with 100% certainty exactly what impact it has on campaigns or interactions that are deployed to customers. And you have to recognize this up front. So it's really important for buyers to think of this. And this is where I love the thread around use cases that we've been talking about throughout, because this is 100% what I tell my customers. This absolutely starts with understanding your use cases and applications for the CDP, because that's where the CDP is going to drive value and contribute. And it's going to drive your plan for building the CDP over time. One of the great things about CDPs is that they're a packaged solution. They're not a full bespoke legacy tool set. So making changes, additions, updates to a CDP in historical terms is relatively easy because you don't have to re-platform the thing. So there's a couple phases of ROI then that you get out of a CDP because of this. Is the first is efficiency, which makes everybody happy up front, being able to reduce manual processes, automate more work, get more data throughput and access on fewer resources. And there is a gain there for sure. But ultimately, what you're betting on and trying to articulate with a CDP is how does it improve marketing efficacy, right? Ultimately, what you have to do, and this is why the use cases are so important, you have to stack enough use cases into the CDP to generate enough cumulative incremental gain across those use cases to overcome the investment. Because let's be honest, CDPs are an investment. They are not inexpensive in marketing budget terms. So you have to use it enough to generate enough gain to offset that cost. And it's absolutely possible, but that's why it's so important to understand how you're going to use it up front and to really have a roadmap for developing the CDP over time to pile enough usage into it, right, to offset that investment and show an ROI.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. Um, Second question that's listed here for you, Jeannie. You mentioned a lot about the collaboration between IT and marketing. What was the one thing that you wish you knew from that you learned that you wish you knew from the start, or you have implemented from the start?
Um, I think that it was going to be an empathy exercise for all of us. Um, like taking time to step out of your own shoes in your own seat to understand where the other people in the room are coming from, what motivates them, what are they held accountable for, what are their goals, what are their fears. Um, if I had like done that sooner, I think it would have allowed me to approach things from their perspective rather than from my perspective. Um, I think I underplayed the human side of it. I'm very like data driven and numbers focused. So I thought, well, the numbers speak for themselves and that will all be, all I need. But, you know, there's human beings behind our work and understanding what motivates them, I think was really important and something I wish I'd done sooner.
Totally agree. As a marketer working with our data teams, just there were a lot of assumptions that I made that I thought they knew about the numbers, the processes behind my numbers. And as I turned over that requirements document, it was they would do exactly what I said, but not have that additional institutional knowledge of me as a marketer to get me the results that I would expect. And then leaning in to understand what they know and they don't know, and to be more empathetic to like the time it takes them to do all the things I'm asking them probably would have went a longer way. So I'm like right there with you.
Yeah.
Um, we have one last question for Ranajay. You know, with all the risk around third-party cookies and the idea of GDPR, like how is Citizen Watch evolving their first-party direct data collection strategies to maintain robust customer profiles while really respecting the patchwork of privacy out there?
It's very important for our organization to maintain a rich first party data, and then it comes with risks because we we as a brand, we not like a typical retailer will not have like multi-billion of first party data, will not have that.
Mhm.
But what we have a very uh, loyal customers who have we get the consent to store their data, use their data kind of situation.
Mm.
What we try to build with our first party data is to create a depth on them, so create a more enrichment on those profiles. So if we get a consent, if we pass that all privacy protocols, we want to know almost most of the things about our customers, how they perceive our brand, how they look at our brand, how they value our brand, what they do not like, what they like, and all information as much as possible. So what we are creating is a moderate surface area of first party data, but a very deep, so that we can understand our customers much better than the market. And this is a continuous process. We are being innovative, and we are also being um, careful about the compliance at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're at the top of the hour. I would just to say first, thank you for all the audience for all the thoughtful questions. If we didn't get to your questions today, please feel free to reach directly out to our team. And finally, I'd like to thank all of our panelists one more time for sharing all their expertise and insights in our webinar today. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Jason.